This is a Defocus Media production.
Audio Jungle.
What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Daryl Glover.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Lyerly, resident optometry nerd.
And welcome to Defocus Media, optometry's #1 podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics, latest technology, eyewear, practice management, and more. So sit back, relax, and defocus.
Hello and happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm Jennifer Lyerly, and thanks for tuning in for a new episode of Defocus Media coming to you live again this evening. We've got an excellent guest on the show tonight. Dr. Neena James is joining us, and she recently had a really big video launch with Allergan around dry eye and restasis. And we were talking a little bit before we got on the show about what a whirlwind of experience that's been as that video kind of got launched in the past week. But we really want to get to know the woman behind the video, Dr. Neena James.
Well, hey guys, thanks for having me. I was so excited when Dr. Jen asked me, and so this has been a really fun experience even so far.
Tell us a little bit about your background in optometry and how you got to this point in your career.
So I just have really been fortunate. I was interested in a lot of different things in college and undergrad, things like that. I was into research and that I had some eye projects, and that was kind of how I got involved in eye care. I had a project relating to diabetic retinopathy and then relating to retinoblastoma, actually. And so I just thought this was really cool. And I had some great mentors that just decided to go to optometry school, and maybe I would do both. Maybe I would go the clinical trial route or the research route. And then I realized I really love seeing patients, and it's just really feeds my soul to work with the public and kind of have that experience to make somebody's day, answer their questions, impact their daily living. I always tell people, just if there's one thing we can do to improve something about their day, if we can improve one thing about their day, that's a huge deal. If we can, even with our older patients, if we can just be that friendly face, that smile, it really is so nice. And then we can always learn from there, and we can still always be a student and be the nerd and do research and things like that on our own. So I decided that I do love the clinical side of things. So that's been great. So I bought a practice 6 years ago now. I met this gentleman when I was finishing up in school. He was in my hometown, and we just kind of heard about each other through the grapevine, and we met over the phone. We talked over the phone a couple of times, and we met once, and he was looking to retire and just kind of said, look, if you come on with me, I want to retire. I want to buy the practice. I want you to buy the practice. My wife wants to retire. She ran the practice. And he really was just very upfront with me, which I respected, and him and I got along really well. So, and he ran a great practice. His patients loved him. He was very disease focused, very thorough, just very by the books too. So it was really great. And him and I worked together well. He went part-time after I came on, and then I bought the practice a year later, just like we had planned, and started making some small upgrades. He had been trying to retire for a while. And like I said, he was really all about his patients and all about his family. And he had the best equipment, and everything else had kind of been cosmetically just the same for a little while, because he knew like a house, somebody new would want to come in and put their own stamp on it. So started making some cosmetic changes, and he really helped me through that, which was nice. Like, he helped me change light bulbs and light switches and just all these little things, and paint colors and everything. And then he ended up retiring. Our plan was 5 years or 5 babies, whichever came first. He promised me. That was like our icebreaker. Funny enough, he told me that the first day we met. And I was like, oh, I'm not even married, 5 babies. But he started to have some health issues with his feet. And so he left about after 3 years. And then I brought in 2 associate doctors because I was pregnant at the time. So he did as much of my maternity leave as he could, but we brought on some more doctors. I just never wanted to be alone. If I ever did have to step out for any reason, I wanted to make sure I had somebody to take care of my patients who we all knew and trusted. So it was great to bring on other doctors. And then now we all just work part-time. So for family reasons and just to pursue other endeavors as well. So that's been fantastic. The practice, we see pediatrics to geriatrics, which I love too. That's the other thing about clinic that I just love so much is the variety that we're able to see. So we see 4-month-olds, we do infancy exams. I like to see them at 9 months for that. And then because I guess the gentleman I bought the practice from that was an older doc, not even really, he was in his 60s, but the patients that came from him were a lot of older patients, which I love. So we see a lot, like you get a cake the year of your 100th birthday when you come to see us. So we see a lot of like 70, 80, 90-year-olds. So that's really, really fun. So we do a lot of disease, glaucoma, macular degeneration, things like that. And then we do just younger routine exams, try and make it really fun, educate patients about their eyes, and then do preventative care a lot of times. And then my passion is really dry eye. So we see a lot of dry eye patients too, and really across the spectrum. We had a parent call about their 16-year-old the other day. And then a lot of the older patients, it really is the most debilitating part of their day, even through all of their, other things, other health issues from just being, 85, their dry eye is really something that impacts their quality of life. So
what developed that passion in you? Was it something you were interested in school, or did it come about as you were seeing patients and seeing that need?
A little bit of both. So I was a sufferer, actually. I never really had a lot of eye exams until I was 16 and I failed my driver's test. And
you and I had the same.
yeah, and I was like a minus 125. Can you believe it? And I had no idea. My parents had no idea. It had been a couple years since we had seen a family friend for my last eye exam. And so I was just shocked. And then I had a really hard time wearing contacts. And then fast forward a few years, it turned out it was dry eye. And it got to be terrible. I could not even drive. In college, I couldn't even drive to school 5 minutes down the road in my daily disposable contacts. And they would just have deposits on them. They would be so uncomfortable. I would want to leave the bar in college because my eyes were so uncomfortable. It really was debilitating. And even in optometry school, I kind of got it under control eventually, but it was something I've struggled with. So that was a passion that I can relate to patients. I know really that it's not just dry eye, that it can affect every aspect of their daily living.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you built this part of your practice, because you talked about, you had purchased the practice. It probably didn't have a lot of up-to-date technology when it came to dry eye diagnosis and treatment. What have you invested in to kind of build out this dry eye as a specialty?
So at first, I really didn't invest in anything. Your biggest asset is your voice and the way you can educate your patients, and then the way you make them feel. No pun intended, but make them feel seen, and just educate your staff on that too. I really tried to have the staff share that same passion with me. I do dry eye evals on them because it helps me to learn, first of all, and have that just open dialogue on what makes sense, what's better, what's a good flow, and then they understand it, they experience it, and they can voice it to the patients, and then they're more in tuned and passionate when they go through that chief complaint, that questionnaire. They're not just going through the motions. And that's something we really focus on anyway, that you're here to do the very best you can for every single patient encounter. You're here to provide the best experience, not just go through the motions, but this is a real way that they, even on autopilot, it means something to them and they understand it. So we really just started by focusing on really good pointed patient history, case history. Not, do your eyes feel dry? Are you having any burning, stinging, watering, itching? Do are you having to take your contacts out before the very end of the day? Are they a little less comfortable at the end of the month? Anything. We really ask very specific questions to the patients. And then we deal a lot with allergies too here, which kind of goes hand in hand, being in Alabama. And then just simple stuff. We will do fluorescent staining, and I'll note your breakup time. I'll talk about it with the patient, what that means. And then we just track that over time. One of my favorite things to do is to put lissamine green in and then show the patient just with a mirror that you can see, or have them, if they're younger, have them pull out their cell phone and take a selfie, and then they can magnify it and blow it up. So that costs nothing. Most practices have some lissamine green laying around, or you can buy that really inexpensive. That costs nothing. And then if you do the cell phone picture too, the patient goes home with that to show their spouse or their roommate or their friends too. So that's a really simple, low tech thing that we could do. The first real investment we made was just an extraocular camera. And it was just actually a camera that we attached to the slit lamp directly. And that was nice to be able to show patients staining and meibomian glands, things like that, blepharitis. So that was a really fun thing that patients can relate to, because the retina is kind of foreign to patients. When you show them this cool OCT, they don't really know, where is that in my eye again? But when you show them that picture of their lids and lashes and their beautiful iris, they're like, wow, that's my eye. That, they really relate to it and they get it. And when you show them that's a rough spot, that's damaged tissue, kind of like really dry skin that can turn into further problems, they really understand, okay, we have to do something about it. So we do even treat asymptomatic patients. So that's a big thing that we've seen, and they do notice an improvement. We tell them, it's our job as the doctor. Most patients are not symptomatic of their diabetes or their high blood pressure, but it's our job to kind of manage that and track that for them. And you don't really need anything fancy. This past year, the biggest investment we made was the Cynosure Temperature Envy device. So it's a radio frequency device for, we use it mainly for MGD, and we've been really happy with that. We offer Zest treatments for blepharitis as well. And we've offered several different treatments for blepharitis over the years. The practice already had lid scrub products and things like that available. And then another big thing I implemented was just handing out a written homework sheet for patients. And we do kind of, we have them pre-printed, but then I can add to it in the patient chart and print them a new one if it's a lot of things, or if it's just a couple little things, I'll just handwrite it on there and make the highlighters, lots of colors, try and make it more unique to them and more specific and more interesting to them, so they're more likely to do it. And then another thing we do sometimes are virtual follow-ups, where a staff member will call and check in on the patient, see how they're doing with their homework. So it doesn't really require, in my opinion, a lot of fancy equipment. It's just more taking the time and building your routine, seeing what works for you and your staff. You really can't do it alone, and your patients. And then we've demoed a lot of fancy equipment over the year. And even now we continue to demo, like we just demoed the iLux again. And there's a new one coming out this summer that's cool, that has my mammography on it. Because I was really a little bit like, I've already I demoed that last year. And then when they told me that, I was like, okay, bring it. I want to see it. And then we demoed the tear care recently. But yeah, we demoed MIBO a few years back. We just never quite committed to it. And then recently, now that we wanted to make sure we had all the infrastructure in place as far as our office went, to really educate patients on it, do the treatment properly, and then do the proper follow-up. And so we finally got there, and we've been so glad that we did.
I'm glad you segued into this, because I really do want to talk to you about your regimen. I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles when a doctor's integrating dry eye care, because there's so many different ways to treat, and there's so many different types and presentations of dry eye. And sometimes you can almost confuse yourself as a practitioner as to, okay, what should we start with? Because really getting a patient on a consistent treatment regimen is the best way for success, but you've got to start somewhere. So where do you kind of usually go in? Holistic over-the-counter approaches versus prescription medication versus an in-office procedure?
So every patient really is different. And believe it or not, I usually do talk about several different things to the patient on that first encounter, because it's not just going to be a one-hit wonder. I tell them the dry eye is chronic and it's cyclic. You're going to have periods where it's good, and then you're going to have periods where it flares up. So we will probably do a lot of different things throughout our time together. And that kind of sets us up to, like, when we grow old and gray, you want to see these patients back. You don't want to just be a one and done, and then they really feel like, I'll use like a sports analogy, like, okay, this is the first quarter and this is our game plan, and we may need to adjust it as we go. So yeah, I usually definitely at least address hot compresses help to release the oil glands in your eyes, help them to make better secretions, better lubricants for the surface of your eye. So we definitely talk about hot compresses, and not just little washcloth in the shower. It needs to be, you have to use the microwave. You have to get really hot heat. It needs to be there for 5 minutes at least. We talk about it. You might be blurry after. We really talk about the hot compress, and then we do sell the lid scrub. So that's an easy thing. They can just leave with the office with the product we like, or then I say you can get them anywhere there so they don't feel like we're selling them, or if they don't feel like if they didn't get it that day that it's a lost cause. We talk about those things. And then I'm really passionate about just your daily routine and your household products too. So we talk about like blinking and visual hygiene at the computer. We talk about pets and allergies and, medications. We talk about humidifiers and sleep. And I usually kind of just tell them anything you do 5 days a week, most of the time, think about making a change to it. So if they're suffering from dry eye, then that's usually something I say. If it's hairspray, if it's coffee, if it's makeup, if it's the computer, anything, think about trying to make some intentional change to it. If it's coffee, you can just change the brand of coffee. You don't even have to give up coffee, because the way our food is so processed nowadays, sometimes you can just develop a sensitivity to that over time. So that's something we talk about. And then I do usually talk about and the artificial tears. It's just shocking to me that there's no societal norm for dry eye. Like, we brush our teeth, we wear good tennis shoes, we take care of all the rest of the parts of our body. We spend a fortune on our hair, which you can replace in a heartbeat.
Or not.
Serves no function, but yeah, everybody is like ingrained to wash their hair with expensive products. But there's no societal norm. There's nothing that we're supposed to do for our eyes every day. So I just tell that to people. I'm like, buy your toothbrush. I want those wipes or that dropper bottle, that Refresh, Sustain, good quality brand name artificial tear, and I want that used every single day when you brush your teeth. So I really talk to them about things like that. But we do say they're prescription medications that reduce the inflammation in your eye. It's important to use that word inflammation, I feel like, because then they really take it seriously too. And then when you do end up writing them the script because they're not compliant or they're not getting better, they're not surprised by it. Or I definitely do go ahead and write the script the first day for some patients too. If they come in with SPK, with papilla, with a really reduced tear breakup time, even if they don't have complaints, I'll write it, especially if they're a contact lens wearer, like post LASIK or diabetic. Or if they do come in with a lot of complaints, you don't want your patient to feel like they wasted their time or they have to wait too much, because it's going to take a little time to really get in the swing of things anyway. So you don't want them to feel like they went to the doctor for their headache and you gave them some Advil. So a lot of times I will prescribe or do several things like on that first visit even. I do a lot of punctal plugs. I don't usually do those on the first visit. I do like to drug and then plug. You want to address the inflammation. Again, clean everything out first. And then the Temperature Envy, the radiofrequency device that we have, the dry eye treatments are not covered by insurance. They're pricey. So you don't want to make people feel like too pressured, but I definitely bring it up the first visit too. And again, we've had a lot of patients just be like, I don't want the homework. I don't want to do all that. I want the relief now. That sounds great. Sign me up. So it really depends on each patient. So I try and just briefly present the holistic over-the-counter approach, because I want them all doing that anyway. And then I try and go ahead and talk about prescription medications, steroids for stasis, things like that, Xiidra, anything, or the in-office treatments. And then depending on the patient situation, how they present too, we kind of go there with our plan of action. And my technicians do a lot of that too. My staff, everybody, we have a lot of patient education material around the office. We have screensavers on our TVs and computers that talk about it all. And so, my staff is really excited about the Temperature Envy. That was kind of one of the things that went into us not doing some of the treatments before. The staff was a little bit nervous about it, and so it's hard to do something when your team is not really behind you. And yes, you're the doctor, you can convince them to get behind you, but when you demo a machine that you're really excited about it and then your staff is immediately like, this is amazing, and they just talk about it without, I have not even told them at all, they just love to talk about it. So it's been really cool.
That's amazing. Well, we have a question that's come to us live that I'm going to pop up on the screen. Thank you, Alyssa, for asking this. So, blocked tear ducts and dry eye, sometimes the symptoms can seem similar. A patient will come in with chronic watering as a complaint. And then I know I've actually recently had several patients like this where you assume based on their complaints, we're going to be dealing with dry eye. And then you you do a NAFL staining and you actually are finding like, oh, that dye 10 minutes later hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely sodium fluorescein is my best friend at detecting these. But what are your thoughts, Dr. James?
I completely agree. Yeah, I just love that yellow fluorescein. Like, it's the best thing ever. And it does look cool. You can make it fun to the patient, too. Yeah, fluorescein is just easy. Like, anybody can do it. You're in the slit lamp anyway. You might as well do fluorescein. And then if I do actually do a lot of irrigation. So we just have these little disposable cannula and syringes, and we just have a little sharps container that we put them in when we're done. I have the patient sign a consent form, and we do a lot of that because, especially with allergies in this area, it's just nice to flush everything out and get it clean. I think it's fun personally, and then I've just seen a lot of results from it. And that was something too that I do from doing the workups on like my staff members and family. And actually the doctor that I bought the practice on, that was one of my biggest slam dunks with him too. I would do the irrigation on him and he would just have so much relief. He would look so much better in the microscope. So I just found that is an easy thing you can do. The patients tolerate it pretty well. They appreciate it. They see relief pretty immediately, which is nice. Like, that's one of the things I love about dry eye too, is you can actually, it's relief. You get all the glory, it's relief they can feel and tangibly improve their day. When you treat glaucoma, you see the big win and you're satisfied, but the patient doesn't necessarily understand it as much. It's not really improving their daily living in most cases. Thankfully, we're catching it early enough. But with dry eye, they can really feel those results. So that's why I love the irrigation. I love the punctal plugs, and then the temperature NV too. They sit up off the chair and they're just like, wow, my eyes are supposed to feel like this. I had no idea. So that's great. And then that's why I like to see patients back frequently too. So if I do start them on a medication, if I do start them on Restasis or anything like that, I want to see them back to give them that little encouragement if they're not feeling a lot of results right then. But a lot of them are too, because again, I like to under promise and over deliver. So if we can see one aspect of their day that's improved a little bit, like if they're waking up and their eyes are a little bit less screwed.
We lost Dr. James for a second, but I'm sure she'll be right back. Sometimes the connection just goes out for a moment. Let's do this while we're waiting for Dr. James to come back in. We have a clip from the video that she did around how she educates her patients about dry eye in the chair. So let's flip over to that video.
Once I've confirmed a diagnosis, I'll share it with the patient. I want to make sure they really understand their diagnosis, what to expect, and to plan for a follow-up. These conversations usually go like this. Sounds like you've been experiencing some changes, which is why you've been using artificial tears more often.
Yes, that's right. And they haven't really been working.
I hear you, Maria. After reviewing your test results, it's clear you have a type of chronic dry eye. It starts when your tear glands become inflamed, and that inflammation leads to reduced tear production. Without enough tears, the film protecting your eye can break down, creating dry spots on the surface of your eye. Let's take a look at the picture of your eye. We can see the inflammation here, which confirms your diagnosis.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that you know what's causing my frequent use of artificial tears. Everything I've done has only worked temporarily.
That's what I'm here for.
What causes this?
There are several factors that may contribute to this type of chronic dry eye. Tear production is presumed to be suppressed due to ocular inflammation associated with a condition called keratoconjunctivitis sicca.
Is there a cure?
While there's no permanent cure, there are FDA-approved treatments to increase tear productions in patients like you.
Will chronic dry eye go away on its own?
Chronic dry eye is a progressive disease, so it's a good thing you're here today so we can get you started on treatment. Remember, chronic dry eye treatment is a marathon, not a sprint. Although the artificial tears you're taking can provide temporary relief, we want you to be on treatment that helps you make more of your own real tears. Let's also schedule a follow-up to check on your chronic dry eye and assess your progress. Chronic dry eye is a progressive disease that many patients have most likely been trying to manage on their own for quite a while. My goal with these conversations is to make sure my patients know their concerns are valid and that their needs are being met. I try to put myself in their shoes to relate to what they're going through. That's how a typical patient education conversation in my practice goes. How do you handle patient education at diagnosis?
Hey, Dr. Dave.
Okay, we're back.
So we just watched a clip from your video, and you guys, if you wanted to watch the entire video, you can go over to the Allergan Eye Facebook page, because it's really great. It kind of takes you through start to finish, even like the pre-testing and history questions that you're answering, that your staff is asking patients, and how to kind of gauge that patient education, both with you as the doctor and then with patient education from your staff as well. You want to share a little bit about your experience? Like, how did you get involved with making this video, and what was it like to film it?
It was actually really, really cool. So it was something I had been a consultant for Allergan for a couple of years, and they asked if I would do a Facebook Live initially. And then, things just kind of move slow with the pharma world. They want to dot all their I's and cross all their T's. So it took a little while. And then Facebook Premiere, they thought would be a cooler option. And so I was like, okay, sure, that sounds great. And I really had no idea, because then COVID hit. So the videos we were doing were like me shooting by myself, and they looked really terrible because that is not my gift. But then they were like, okay, we're really going to do this. We're going to send a team out to you. And I thought, okay, they're going to send a couple people out. It'll be no big deal. No, there was like 2 moving trucks worth of equipment. They really rolled out the red carpet. Like a couple people from Allergan came out from LA. Then there's actually a couple more that were supposed to come that just due to scheduling couldn't make it. They had 2 moving trucks worth of equipment come out, and I've never really known what all goes into a professional video shoot. There are so many details. I mean, they checked like every angle, every lighting aspect. They wanted us to turn off the air conditioner because it was like cutting on and off, and you could hear the sound. They had so much cool equipment. I was just like fascinated by all of it. It was really, really neat. I thought like, oh, it'll be like shooting a wedding video or something. They'll have a couple cameras. No, they really had so much stuff. I was very, very impressed with how technical and detail-oriented, professional the crew was. And they were a pretty local crew. They were from Birmingham, two hours from me. So I was like, I didn't even know there were people around here like this. So it was a very cool experience. They made us feel very pampered. They did our hair and makeup. And they let me use one of my technicians from my office too, which was great as well. So she has actually been with the practice for 10 years. Has done every job in the office. And she's a dry eye sufferer too. So it was cool for her to be able to go through that experience with me as well. So.
That is amazing. How did that relationship first develop? Because we had run a poll earlier today asking our audience, who is interested in partnering and working with industry? It was 100% yes, I'm interested. So I think many doctors are wanting to learn from you. How do you even get started in developing these kind of relationships?
Yeah, I think so. Mine was interesting. I was reaching out to different industries. I have a product that I have patented actually, and it's a solution. And so I was just kind of had my little spec sheet, and I was just reaching out to different industry partners regarding that. And I think through that, I developed some relationships at Allergan that kind of stuck. And then our local rep was a big one too, who she wanted me. So that was how I got in the consulting, was I just kind of reached out, and then I got asked to be a consultant. And then our local rep wanted me to be to speak for some of her different territories. And so she kind of was like, would you be interested in speaking, blah, blah, blah. And at the time I was pregnant with my first child. And so I was like, I don't know. And then a year later, she asked again. And, I was like, I think so. And it was COVID at the time. So everything was virtual. So she was like, you have got to do it. Perfect. And so I did. And it's been great actually. And she really has encouraged me. And so make sure to spend time with those folks, because they do. It's a hard job, and they're very knowledgeable. They go through a lot of training, and they really are here to serve you as a doctor. Like, I know some doctors just don't it's hard to make the time to spend with them. It is during a busy clinic schedule, but they really are a good resource. And so she was the one that got me into the speaking, actually, as far as programs and things like that go. But I would just say reach out if most companies have information just online of different people, and if you email them, they're really responsive. So I just did some cold emails. And so if you'll just look online and email and introduce yourself, things like that, you can ask your reps for if they are able to introduce you up the ladders. Because another rep of ours, when they found out about this, that I spoke for Allergan, they were like, oh, can you speak for our product? And they just sent something in, and then I got a voicemail from somebody corporate at their company too. So the local reps really do have a lot of connections, but otherwise you can just look online and send out an email. And your local rep might have a name too, or an email that they could give you if they're not connected to be able to connect you directly.
I think that's absolutely great. Same path for myself as far as just making it a priority to make those relationships with your local representatives. One, talking to them, you can learn so much good information that's really useful to your patients. They usually present to you in a way that you can use that same verbiage in how you present to your patients. And like keywords that patients are going to respond to. I really glean a lot from that. And then like the information about what coupons you need. How's it going to work at the pharmacy? Oh my gosh, that's not something you're going to read in a scientific article about the product. No. But we've got to know how to navigate the patient's insurances and how to make sure they can afford the medication that I'm prescribing. So this is essential rep information that you've got to make time for. And then above and beyond that, you can develop lifelong friendships and relationships that go above and beyond that great information that you're gleaning, as you kind of just said. So
yeah, they're really a wealth of knowledge. I mean, they really do go above and beyond for us and for our patients. And I encourage my staff to talk to them too. So it is really important to make sure that you give them that face time. But if I'm with patients or something, I don't just want them like sitting in the back waiting for me. I'm like, talk to whatever staff member is available, because they can educate them on the products and on the coupons and how to talk to patients about it, things like that too. So that's really valuable. Even if you're not an owner, your staff still helps you and your patients so much. And everybody has the ability to kind of make that call. Just, hey, go talk to my tech over there. Go talk to whoever's in the break room at lunch. They bring cookies enough to earn to be able to talk during the lunch break. And if they don't want to hear it, they can go somewhere else. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, this happens obviously all the time. Like when you have a busy practice, like pretty much everyone does at this point. Sometimes you cannot stop and have even a 5-minute conversation, right? When you've got a patient waiting on you, and it's going to just exacerbate already where things might be chugging along because a few people were 5 minutes late to their appointments, right? It all compounds. So I usually, if that's happening, I know like there's no way I'm going to be able to work this in. I'll tell them, hey, you've got my email address. Let's set up a time because I really want to learn what you have to say to me. So I want to make sure they always feel valued. Like, I so appreciate you came to my office today. Yeah. Please don't think that because I can't talk to you right now doesn't mean I want to hear from you. I just need to do it at a different moment. And that, I think is a nice, respectful way to go about it because, a lot of us, we have a hard time taking a break to have any conversation or even go to the bathroom.
And that's a good idea to schedule. And that's one thing that we've done is nowadays a lot of reps are open to trying to come on a schedule, and they'll do just drop by still. But if you really set that expectation where, hey, I need you to schedule with my front desk to talk to me, then they'll appreciate that you're willing to put them on your schedule and make the time for them. And then you're not as stressed about it. And then two, if they do just drop by, they don't expect you to talk to them as much because they know that they're used to scheduling with you. So that's really helped me to just kind of have them schedule certain special times with me to talk. So that's been really just very, very helpful.
One other thing that you had mentioned that I think is such a good point is once you start doing things like speaking and working with our industry companies, you're going to get more and more opportunities. And sometimes the hardest part is, especially as a young doctor, kind of putting that first step forward to say, this is something that I would be an asset for you to do. And so you mentioned with your solution, you had a spec sheet for it. And that many doctors listening to this are very active with social media. They're very active doing things, and making a media kit or a brand kit about yourself, even if you don't have a specific product that you are working on. Like there's stuff that you have that has true number value on it that you can present objectively, that could kind of help you get the foot in the door. So, I mean, if you guys have active social media and you want to work with industry, definitely put a media kit together so you can show provide information about engagement and how many followers you have that are pertinent followers. Like that's all information you're going to need to share anyway.
Yeah. And they want to see you as the reality of it. Like, I think that I'm passionate about dry eye really comes across, and that I like to educate my patients. Like, that's just kind of my style, is that like I'll talk their ear off. Like, I'm like that mean teacher that I'm like, this is what you have to do, And so if you just kind of tell them about, if on your spec sheet, you can kind of put what your style or what you think your special assets are as a doctor, or, kind of what your passions are. I think that that's something that industry really does value and is what makes you unique too.
And at the end of the day, like I said, it has to be your true legitimate practice. And one of the things besides being able to talk about this is you're prescribing it. Like, it's not just that, oh yeah, I treat dry eye. Your reps can actively see what contact lenses you prescribe, what pharmaceuticals you prescribe. So they're going to know if you're utilizing their product. And then it becomes a very natural partnership because it's something you already organically believe in and are utilizing in your patients. So the absolute key step is a product that you use and you believe in.
Yes. That's definitely true. And then, I mean, there's always room to learn more too. I think that that's really cool because, I definitely inherited a practice that had a lot of dry eye. He just had a lot of disease in general. So there was already a lot of Allergan prescriptions there. But then I had firsthand, I saw the results from those prescriptions. So I absolutely did believe in those products. And then dry eye was something that I was passionate about. So it just definitely went up from there. So they do see that, because your experience does matter too. You do have to have that hands-on experience with the products, but you can always gain that experience too. So they understand if you're just kind of starting out as well. So,
well, we're about to wrap up this show because you've been so generous with your time, but I wanted to just kind of, as your practice owner with a very busy practice, you're seeing all spectrums of care. Is there one thing that you've done in your practice that you feel like has really made a difference in efficiency and been a game changer to you?
Ooh, I feel like there's a lot of things. There's not just, that's always our goal, is like work smarter, not harder. And so I always try and ask like my staff, what is something we always just try, and when we have sit down meetings, what can we do to work smarter? And I feel like that is probably the one thing, is just that we constantly, like almost every Friday, we constantly think about like what is something we could do better, faster, anything. One thing we've really liked is we went wireless a couple years ago, and that's really helped. And I know not everybody can make that big leap, but then we've been able to do a little more cross training because you're not linked to one area. And then we started scheduling before they get to checkout a lot of times too. So like the staff the technician, if they realize they don't have patients waiting, they'll just go ahead and schedule their next year's appointment. Or they'll go ahead and schedule their 3-month dry eye check or their 3-month glaucoma check. They can just look at what the patient typically is having, kind of how their schedule flows. And that's been nice. And when they get to check out, they don't have to deal with scheduling. And then it doesn't make them feel like they're waiting on the doctor, as like it breaks up their wait time and things like that too. So I would just say scheduling at a different time in the visit. And sometimes we even check them out before they see the doctor too. And then if I do end up adding something on, like a punctal plug, if we're really busy, we just bill them for it. Most likely it's going to go to their insurance anyway, but otherwise we'll just add on that one charge at the front desk. But we've just kind of been creative with our order of operations a little bit too. That's been more flexible with our order of operations, I guess.
That's awesome. I love that idea, especially for someone who's a scheduled medical office visit, collecting copays up front. It is easier, guys. Like we already, if they have a cupcake plan, we know what they're going to pay at checkout. So I've also found that very useful in our practice.
Yeah, and just the scheduling, like, let me look at my calendar really quick, let me pull out my phone, like that takes longer than you think. And it's easy. Anybody in the office should be easy. Anybody in the office can do it or can learn how to do it. So, and that's one thing I've loved about working with industry too, is just talking to different doctors and just getting, like, I feel like I learn more from it than I'm imparting the advice at all too, just talking to different people, like talking to you. I don't know, it's just really great, these relationships. And my husband always is like, this is a lot of time. We have 2 small children. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, every time I come back though, my staff has like got all these messages of like ideas I've gotten and things like that. And so they're like, no, it's worth it. They'll tell him, they'll vouch for me.
That's amazing. Yeah. Every time you invest in yourself and your profession, you come back re-energized, learning from everybody else. And like you said, you can bring that back to your practice. And honestly, it fights off burnout. That's my honest opinion about it. If you feel like you're stuck in a rut, you got to get to a conference. You got to get around people to see that they're doing things differently. It will definitely re-energize you.
Yeah. And we do a Google Docs. We have a Google Docs that's like our to-do list and then our ideas. And so everybody can like see it and add to it. And we have a messaging system that we use in the office, not for patient information, but just for like, room 2's been waiting for a little while, or can someone go grab these contacts for me? And that's helped with efficiency too. But just constantly like using the Google Docs and using our messenger to just toss out new ideas has been helpful.
Dr. James, thank you so much again for your time, and we cannot wait to see what you do next. We'll be on the lookout. Congratulations again on an awesome patient education video.
Thank you. All right.
Thank
Bye,
you guys
guys.
all for
Have a good night.
Wrap. Thank you dearly for hanging out with the D-Focus Media team. We hope truly something resonated with you. And if it did, be sure to give us 5 stars. And make sure you follow us on all social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you named it. And our handle is at D-Focus Media on all platforms. And until next time, be sure to keep it 2020. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.